today is still a lot of brands and business, they really hesitated, right, to enroll more into sustainable. The business can succeed if you type into sustainability, and you can make an impact in the world if your brand, if your service can start educating your audience, your consumer, about the importance of sustainable.
I think a lot of companies come to the table because of external pressures, and that becomes a very reactive approach to sustainability.
It's not just about creating, a one-off impact, right? How can you make an impact, but as a brand, sustain that?
The balance is really talking about things that are close to who you are. What topics are close to either your employees, but also your business?
Hi everyone, here is Maira Genovese, founder and president of MG Empower, global influencer market agency. And this is our Influencer Marketing Uncover podcast. Today I'm here with our co-host Ed. Ed is our senior account manager at MG Empower, and together we are very happy to be joined by Pia Heidenmark, former Chief Sustainability Officer for IKEA, and today independent senior advisor for the brand. With over 20 years of international business experience working and advocating for sustainability across her professional career, she's a people and planet-centric business leader with passion for purpose leadership, providing that a strong sustainability performance leads to a strong business performance. How are you, Ed? I'm so excited to have you here today with me for the first time to co-host this podcast.
Hi, Maira and everybody. This is my first time on the podcast, and I'm super happy to be co-hosting today's episode with you and our very special guest coming all the way from Sweden to discuss with us how brands can inspire consumers to join the circular economy and have a more sustainable consumption. Pia, welcome to Influencer Marketing Uncovered, MG Empower's podcast. First of all, thank you for accepting our invite as a driving force behind Inge's ethos of people and planet business with IKEA and Climate Group's electrical vehicle. We are super thrilled to have you today for us to speak about such an important topic. How are you, and can you tell the audience a little bit more about you and your professional experience?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. My 25 years in sustainability, the last 13 years with IKEA, where the last 5 was as Chief Sustainability Officer. And before IKEA, I worked in the hospitality industry as head of sustainability. And then before that, I was in academia doing a PhD on sustainability. So throughout my career, the red thread is sustainability. But I started out in a business degree. So I've always been working in different business sectors. And my passion sits really in this intersection between purpose and profit, and really building sustainable, I would say sustainable brands, but really building sustainable business models.
Wonderful, Pia. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Very excited about our conversation. It's the first episode that we're just going to focus on sustainability. So it's a pleasure to have you here and having this conversation to share, all about the importance of campaigns with a purpose, but more than anything, campaigns that can transform sustainability of a way of living, right? So Pia, today, you coming from a background of brand, working for so many years for IKEA, and by the way, very, very impressed by the campaign that you have done with IKEA, which calls buy back, right? That you have done to incentivize the circular economy, which I really wanted to talk about that later. But I think before, just wanted to kind of get your thoughts and just start this conversation that today is still a lot of brands and business, they really hesitated, right, to enroll more into sustainable and getting practice and believing that the business can succeed if you type into sustainability, and you can make an impact in the world if your brand, if your service can start educating your audience, your consumer, about the importance of think sustainable. So based on your experience and seeing what you have done for IKEA, So what's the real power when it comes to the circular economy, and how this can actually, do you think, on your point of view, can directly relate it to a more sustainable success for companies, but also for consumers, right? And to make an impact into the world, into the planet?
I think from many different angles, really. The way I see sustainability and the definition of it is fundamentally economic, social, and environmental responsibility, to really looking at all dimensions of a company. And I mean, no company works or operates in a vacuum. We're dependent on people. We're depending on people in the supply chain. We're depending on people as consumers. And we are dependent on the financial system, but we are also dependent on the environmental system. There are very few companies that are not abstracting one resource or another to be able to produce a product. And I think we have kind of missed the part of environmental and social, which is more around a business opportunity. So I think a lot of companies come to the table because of external pressures. If there's legislation coming, or there is NGOs doing a campaign against them, and that becomes a very reactive approach to sustainability. And I would encourage companies to rather look at the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals, so the 17 different goals, and really reflecting on what issues in the world around us, in society, or really from an environmental point of view, do you as a company have competence and capacity, and I would say skills and entrepreneurship to solve the problems, and or maybe not fully you solving the problem, but at least being part of the solution, and using that creativity that you have as a company to find ways of solving big problems, and not what I'm hoping for is a shift in companies where we see new companies, more and more new companies, startups, really not just looking at what's the next gadget that I can, sell to people that marginally makes their life better, but I get a bottom line or a top line, but really starting to look at how can I make money as a company? How can I be profitable? How can I have a purpose that goes beyond just making money for my shareholders, and really have a lasting impact on matters that really, really matters. And you see that now with all the startups in the plant-based food space, in food waste, using digital solutions, sensors, AI. And you see it also in circular economy with the platforms. You see it with electric vehicles and sharing platforms. So there's a lot of really interesting things happening in the startup space, where you look at the problem and really looking at how can I, with my capabilities, be part of solving that.
And then, and I love that you said, because it's not just about creating, a one-off impact, right? It's like, how can you make an impact, but as a brand, sustain that, right? Because we see that often that business and brands and service, they sometimes look at what's happening in the world now, that I can, exactly what you said, that I can jump into it and make myself participate in that movement, getting the margin, getting the revenue, and then go to the next one. And I think now more than ever, consumers, they're very savvy, right? Especially when you're talking about the young generation, right? The Gen Zers and the millennials. So the way they shop and the way they engage with brands is not the same that I used to engage 10, 20 years ago. So now they're actually looking for brands that actually are making some kind of impact before they engage with the brand, because they're much more well educated, and they wanted to make sure that they are consuming and engaging with brands that are trying to make the world that we're living in better at somehow. And of course, sustainability for this young generation, it's something that they got the flag out there, right? So they are the ones that are creating this movement, especially on social media, and they're very outspoken about the importance that sustainability is for them, and the future that they wanted to be seeing and to believe in is a future that is more sustainable. And how, like a brand, like based on what you have created for IKEA, so how do you actually inspire your consumer, like let's say the consumers of IKEA, right, to actually embrace that more ethical and sustainable way of consumption, but is still coming to IKEA as an example, as you work there and create that circular economy, and actually inspiring them to actually, okay, IKEA is doing that, I want to be part of that. How do you embrace that with our consumer and making sure that they wanted to be there with the brand, in this case with IKEA, and be part of that and embracing that with the brand?
I mean, we do it in many different ways. And I think the key is in what you just said, in terms of consistency in all your channels. And when I say channels, I really mean all channels. So also Saturday night conversations at the dinner table with employees and their friends, because if you're seen as just doing a campaign because, like you said, that's the new thing, and you want to put your brand in that, but your employees know that that's just window dressing, that will come out. That the biggest and most important ambassadors are the employees. They are, for a brand like IKEA, they are meeting the customer in the stores, on our customer call centers. And even if more and more business is shifting to online, it is that interaction and in all the different channels that you reach. So being consistent, being true to who you are and being true to where you're doing well, but also sharing where you have, space to improve, so to say. So I think being true as a brand is the starting point. Then when it comes to communicating and marketing what you do, I think it's an evolving journey, because I find that very, very few brands have really cracked it and that are doing it in a good way. I think that there's a tendency, if you do too little, then consumers assume that you're hiding and that you're not doing anything. If you do too much, you're accused of greenwashing. So you need to find that balance. And I think the balance is really talking about things that are close to who you are. So depending on the brand you are, to jump out and do campaigns about something that's completely unrelated to your own business, because that's what everyone is talking about. I believe consumers see through that and they really wonder, like, why are they putting their money in that? They should be doing this and this. So I think it's really reflecting on what topics are close to either your employees, but also your business. So if you're a water dependent industry, do something around water. Don't jump into and do something about another important topic that's not related to your business. And then when it comes to impacting, inspiring consumers, I mean, first of all, you need to have relevant products. I mean, we have done so much research, consumer research at IKEA, and yes, consumers are way more interested today than when I started 25 years ago, even I would say 5 years ago. COVID has made a huge increase in people's interest in healthy and sustainable living, but they don't want to pay more. They want it to be as inconvenient as the stuff they buy today. And I would really say, why shouldn't they? Why should they have to go to the darkest corner of the store to find a few boring products priced at 10-20% markup, just because you feel good when you buy them? Your starting point should be, I buy the things that I need and want, and they should be of good quality, they should be sustainable, they should be functional, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think I just want to jump back into what you said regarding how these brands and their kind of messaging around sustainability and how they should stick to their kind of own remit, their own field, and how it looks inauthentic when, say, like the water brand are now promoting kind of another part of sustainability. But then I guess over the last few years, when sustainability has become more of an important topic than ever, how do these big brands who previously have had almost like a bad reputation in order to kind of keep their consumers, just kind of switch up their marketing strategy? Like how do they keep their consumers, how do they keep their customers on board and kind of loyal to that brand despite having all these bad sort of media backlash?
You can't do a quick fixed media campaign or PR campaign to try to kind of, shoulder over all the bad things you have done. So I for me, communication is an essential part of sustainability or anything. I mean, you can't get anything done without communication, but the starting point is not communication. You don't start by saying, oh, let's call for a media campaign. You start by really looking at who are we as a company? What makes sense for us to do? And from a sustainability point of view, it's also doing a materiality assessment, understanding where are we the most impacted by what's happening in environment and in social, and where can we as a brand have the biggest impact. And when you kind of have a feeling of that, that's when you can start to say, okay, then it means that we need to do these and these things, and then we can design a communication or media strategy around it. But I think some brands jump into sustainability or purpose and, okay, there's an issue around, I don't know, you shouldn't drink and drive, so I'm going to go in and do a cool campaign around that. Or you shouldn't be doing bad things in the bar, so I'm going to do a cool thing about that. And that's fine if you're a nightclub chain or you're selling alcohol, because then that's your business, that's your customers. But I see too much, I must say, when I go to marketing conferences, and now I'm a bit rude, but I see too many campaigns that are just completely unrelated to the company. And I really sit there saying, well, it's an extremely well executed campaign, and it emotionally gets you. But I really don't understand at the end when the brand comes up and I'm like, why are they in this space? What are they really adding from who they are as a business and the business they do, not just that they spend tons of money doing a cool campaign.
No, that's really interesting. And I think authenticity and almost transparency is very key in kind of any marketing strategies. And, we believe here at MGM Power that influencers are playing a big role in kind of how society evolves, their power of persuasion, and influence is high among the young generation of millennials. And, these are obviously the kind of future generation. And I was kind of listening to an interview you did in 2018, the new NYC sort of Climate Week, where you said 90% of individuals are willing to change their behavior, but willing is one thing and doing is another. But how can brands kind of change their marketing strategies to really focus on that change from willing to doing? Because that's where the real big difference is. So yeah. I don't necessarily classify, am I Gen Z? I might be a Gen Z, but amongst my close group of friends, it is that mindset of willing, but how can brands kind of impact consumers to kind of go ahead and take that next step and reduce that 90% down to say 40-30?
Yeah, and we just did that climate action research again this year, and we see the same, that it's a high proportion, I think it's up 85-86% still, that want to take action. And it's a really high percentage that worry about, especially about climate change. So it's almost this anxiety, especially around in Generation Z and aspirationals. And then it's much lower. So half of those who worry or want to do something that actually take action. And we see the biggest drivers are not knowing what to do, not thinking maybe that their individual action matters, and also finding it to be too expensive or difficult. And also increasingly feeling like companies and government should do more, so I shouldn't do anything, they should fix it. And I actually get a bit worried when there's all these discussions now that some brands have kind of pushed carbon footprint calculators out there to for you to know your footprint and what you can do, as a way to not have to take action themselves. And I fundamentally absolutely believe that companies and governments have a huge burden of action, because governments, they should take care of their citizens. That's their mandate, to take care of their citizens. companies have the ingenuity and the financial often power to actually make change. But individuals should not underestimate what they can do in terms of who you vote for, where you invest. If you have any money to invest, where do you invest them? If you do any savings for your pension, have you asked your bank where the money goes? And then, of course, with your wallet, who do you buy from? So I think you cannot say that the individuals will fix it, but you can't either say that governments and business needs to fix it, because governments take action when they feel like there's a mandate for them to do it. And big companies, small companies taking a step in a certain direction makes government and policymakers feel like, okay, this is where the wind is blowing. So if I go with a legislation in this space, it might be likely to happen. We shouldn't also underestimate the fact that by startups or big companies coming with new products, new solutions, it becomes easier to put policies in place. So if you take, for example, electrification, there's a lot of mayors now that are saying by 2025, 2030, 35, they don't want diesel trucks in their city centers. That is a great incentive for more to shift. I don't think it would have happened if certain now very big company, but originally a very small startup, had put really beautiful, well-designed electric vehicles on the market, showing that there's actually a product there that is interesting. And then you start to get a shift in behavior. So I think the biggest way of creating a shift in behavior is making sure that you have damn interesting products and services to sell. Because then it's such a small percentage of the population still that are really dark green, and they'll just go and buy something because it makes them feel good. But there's a lot of people that are interested in really good, beautiful products.
And do you think like that taking action, in order for us to increase that, we might need to educate more consumers in terms of how do they actually take an action to make an impact? Because I feel like this is personally the way I see that it's missing brands to not just creating products that are sustainable, but also creating content that is more educational, right? So how can I not just like creating a product that is sustainable? Let's talk about clean beauty, right? So now it's like clean beauty 2 years ago, consumers and like we wouldn't know what is clean beauty is about. So today you can see that in the industry of beauty, every brand is trying to type into clean beauty. But what actually is clean beauty? Who's educating the consumers about what is clean beauty? What's the difference of a brand that says it's clean and the brand that says that's non-clean? Is it the ingredient that is in there that is different? Because I think there's a lot of marketing on sustainability. My product is sustainable. My product is clean. But I feel like you're missing a lack when it comes to educational like content. It's like, how can I educate consumer to take action? But also, how can I educate the consumer about what is clean beauty, what is sustainability, and how to take actions to together as a brand and as a consumer, we make an impact. Do you agree with that we are missing that educative, content out there, especially when it comes to social media, right? So social media is a huge platform for brands and, like governments to come and educate it. But I don't see that much often on social, such a powerful platform that is, like 75% of, us human beings are on social all the time. So why not use that platform to educate it more?
No, I agree. I think it is difficult to find a way of how to educate without telling people what to do. And I think as a brand, and I can mainly speak from IKEA, we do not want to be seen as telling people what they should be doing. So the individual choice should always be there. And the best way of kind of creating that individual choice to feel not like you're forcing is to have relevant products. So if I take LED, when we decided to shift away from incandescent to LED, at the beginning, an LED sold at €10 per lamp bulb, and now it's down below €1. And that is, of course, because volume went up. So we could take the price down, but also because a lot of innovation has happened in the last 5-6 years with LED. So it's just a better product that can be done at a lower price. But so again, it comes back to that product. But in terms of campaigns, you need to find that right balance of, you often end up writing these long texts because sustainability is quite complex and complicated, and climate change is science. So how do you tell that in a compelling, easy to grasp way? So you can do quite a lot with kind of taglines and these like simple lines, but then you often need that bit more to explain. I find a lot of sustainability on social media, but that's because I'm in the space and I follow, I follow those who kind of share this information. So yeah, maybe younger influencers, how to maybe bring them in and share knowledge so that they can find better ways and are more comfortable in sharing that side. What I often see, unfortunately, I mean, I have 2 teenage daughters. If I look at the influencers they follow, they learn about something and then they say it, and then my girls come and say, oh, you can't, we can't buy this, or we can't do this, and did you know this and this in the value chain? And I'm like, because I'm doing this as my profession, I'm like, yes, and what they said about that brand goes for absolutely every brand, because that's how the industry is. No one can avoid it, but I have that knowledge, they don't. So it's finding that way, and we often end up in this kind of choice editing, saying don't buy that, or palm oil is bad, which there's elements of it, or single-use plastic is bad, and blah, blah, blah. And we find these kind of single activities, because fundamentally plastic as a material has huge advantages to some others for certain functionalities. So it's not an all bad material, but it ending up in the oceans, and also all the chemicals that goes in. I mean, there's a lot of bad things around it, but it's not as simple as to say, let's stop using single-use plastic straws in the UK, when fundamentally the biggest problem is in Asia and in the rivers and in the oceans in Asia. So, but it's hard to make something that is systems thinking, it's complex. How do you make it into these kind of snippets and tidbits of social media? And that's why you need, not mentioning a brand, but there's quite a lot of filmmakers and producers starting to use their channels to make documentaries, or even, and now I don't know if I can mention, but like take Bridgerton, like 80 million viewers, huge success. They didn't do a documentary about people of different colors. They just made it look like, why not? Because who says that it can't look like we have all kinds of colors in the royal palace? And I'm just wondering, can we find more ways through social media, through films and popular media, where we shift the norm? So the norm is not what it has been. So it's more like eating plant-based, not eating meat every day, 3 times a day. That's normal, and it's nothing strange. Sharing, taking the subway or a bus, or driving electrical or electric scooter, eating plant-based meals, or sorting your waste, whatever, like all these activities that actually has a positive impact. Maybe reflect on, do you need to fly for a long weekend all the time? All these things, if you can just show that life is actually a good life, it's not about a lot of compromises and saying no to things, I think you can normalize it. And then you will see that tipping point where people start to, I want to be in that crowd, rather than in this kind of big crowd that just makes everything that's a wasteful behavior seems to have status. And that I think we need to shift. And I'm soon going to come to my last point, but we did research a few years ago on social media, and they, together with a few other brands. And when we really looked at what are people talking about on social media and what are they sharing, and when they're talking about a good life, they're not sharing their big car or their big steak or, you know, all the commuting they're doing to work. They're really showing, you know, snippets of things they do with their family, with their friends, being outdoors, enjoying the small things in life. So it's not fair to say that everything in social media is to show your, you know, your latest dress or your latest makeup or your latest trip. There's so much more really there in social media, which is much more around the everyday and just being in a context with family and people you love.
You know, I was just coming back to kind of your point on that, around, you know, how brands kind of on social media just portray themselves as being sustainable, and how there's kind of a fine line between being completely, like, absolutely, I guess, a completely sustainable brand to doing a bit. So I feel like initiatives are almost quite a good way to kind of tap into, you know, the Gen Z audience. So for example, I think last year, a couple of years ago, Biotherm, I think clean beauty brand, they did an initiative, like a clean sort of plastic waste initiative, where they had a load of influencers kind of go to the beach, go to the oceans across the world and picking up plastic. And I feel like that is very impactful for kind of any of their followers, because it's kind of shown in an authentic way. It's something that kind of everyone can do, anyone and everyone can kind of do on the next trip to the ocean. So I feel, you know, these brands, to really show that they're sustainable and they're doing their bit, they need to kind of come up with innovative and kind of strategic ways in order to tap into this Gen Z audience. And we're a bit like how you know, IKEA are doing with the buyback scheme. You know, a lack of information, I think, accounts to about 16% of people don't want to lead a sustainable lifestyle due to a lack of information or it being too expensive. So like the buyback scheme is a great way to incentivize people and kind of really simplify sort of the communication around sustainability and how easy it is for someone to get involved in it. Because I guess for the Gen Z, they look at sustainability, it was like, wow, I'm going to have to completely change my whole lifestyle. But it's not like that. You can adjust certain sort of parts of your everyday life in order to kind of do your bit really for the economy. And no matter how big it is, it all accounts to something.
I think that's the thing. I mean, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And I think it's that feeling of do something. And yes, there's sometimes compromises, but I think doing a climate or carbon calculator is a good way to start, because you get a feeling of where am I negatively impacting the planet, and then reflect on which things are easy to change. Like if I take myself, I find it easier to change. Like I've changed my car, so I need to have a car because I live in a small village. I can't get anywhere if I just do public transport. It's easier for me to eat less meat. It is difficult for me to not fly at all because of the job I've had, where I'm operating in the whole world. I can definitely reflect on where I go and why I go, but to say I completely would stop would be very difficult for me to do my job. So there are these elements, but I think it's important to understand where do you have your footprint, and it's fundamentally in what stuff are you eating, where is it coming from, how are you getting around, how are you transporting yourself, and how much stuff are you buying, and then also how do you heat and live. Like those four, that's fundamentally the 4 blocks of the footprint you have. So I think it's just kind of reflecting on those and thinking where can I start. And then what we have seen at IKEA with the projects we've done, and we did in the UK a few years ago, Live Lagom, which was really working with families on kind of areas in their home that they could change. And what we see is that you start on something that makes you kind of get into it, and then you start to change another part of your life, and that becomes kind of a positive spiral of just taking more conscious steps.
I think it's all about starting, right? I think that is the mentality, because sometimes, we think that in order to start and to make an impact and to shift, we need to go and do big things. But actually, it's no, with the small things that we can get into the big impact down the line. But it's just like how to start. And I think is already a great starting point. How can I make a difference on, as exactly what you said, on our day-to-day lives, right? So if I see that I eat meat 5 days a week, and I not just do meat 2 times a week, and then the rest of the week I can just, having, vegetarian food. Yes, I can. So it's just like how to find, your starting point, because I think once you do, then I think you're on a good path to impact and making a change. And what I love about what you said, Pia, is just like that connection between the brand, but not just the consumer, but actually the employees, right? Because I think this is such an important element that a brand, when it goes, you mentioned about a conference that you went and you saw a big, beautiful film, very well executed, but you didn't see the connection between the film and the brand. But because I think everything needs to start in-house, right? With the education, your employees, and getting the internal objective and education, then you can go out there and then spread the message. But if you don't do that internally, how are you going to resonate authentically when you go out there to promote your brand or to promote your product or raise the voice for sustainability? So how at IKEA, such a huge company, right? So many thousands and thousands of employees, how do we engage employers to that mentality of like IKEA is a brand that wanted to, be part of the circular economy and be a brand that's sustainable, but we want this as well internally for all of us to think and act the same? How do you do that in a such big corporation?
It takes time. You need to start. You need to be consistent with your message from the top to the bottom. And again, through all the channels that you have. IKEA has about 170,000 co-workers, so in 31 countries. So you need to, first of all, reflect about change management. And yes, you can do a lot of things on the intranet, or in the staff newsletter and all those things. But I think the basic rule in change management is that you listen to the people close to you, and normally it's your colleagues or your boss. So you need to work through that kind of chain of command of getting the message across. I think it's critical that the CEO and the top management is consistent in their messaging, and also then through their leaders. So the way we have done trainings is often with senior management first, and then like the top 200-300 managers, so that they really internalize what does this mean, and also reflecting and discussing the dilemmas, because there are a lot of dilemmas in sustainability, and as is in many things. So it's not just we decide and then everything is easy. So have that conversation, and then a lot of trainings. We have a lot of sustainability education, but I think it's even more than that, is doing things. And when you involve people in action, so I actually believe more in action than in communication, because I think action is actually a way of communication. So if the employees see that this is what they say, and this is actually what I'm asked to do on the shop floor, and that's consistent, that's when they start to really believe. And then if there is conflict or non-alignment, that you dare to have the conversation of why is it? Because we have set goals to 2030, because we cannot get there and do all these things perfectly today, because that would cost too much. That's why we work on a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan or a 5-year or 2-year plan. So I think it's daring to have that conversation, and then being also brave enough to have that conversation, because once you unleash your employees, they will challenge you back. They'll say, you know what, we're doing this and this and this. It's not consistent with what we're saying. And then you need to have that conversation. Why is it not consistent? What can we improve? And also then involve in engaging the employees to come up with the solutions, because they often know the problems way better. So having a sustainability team in the company is critical, because you need that deep expertise. But believing that they will fix everything, that's like shooting yourself in the foot, because sustainability is about every function in the company. I mean, sales team needs to make sure that you sell the products, the sustainable products, that you tell the story to customers. Marketing communication needs to get the message out. Procurement needs to make sure that you buy according to your sustainability policy, etc., etc., etc. So, I mean, you really, really need every function of the company to be involved and engaged.
Wow, amazing. And it's incredible to to see that the training element, as you said, as well as they need to, in order for them to believe, you need to act, right? Because without action, the communication alone, it's not sufficient to get the action. So I love that. Pia, we could stay here, talking forever, because it's such an, a topic that here at Imaging Power, you're so kind of eager to understand more, and talking with, leaders like yourself that can bring that knowledge to our audience about how brands can type into sustainability and how, we can start. So here for audience today, I think, as a final message from you, I would love you. I know you're talking about that's all important to start. So if you could give, an advice for brands that want to type in sustainability, but also consumer it, what would be your, let's say your three, main things that you would say for them to actually act and make a starting point?
Depending on the size of the company and the phase they're in, because companies are in so many different phases right now. I think many are getting involved, but still in different phases. But if you haven't done anything, then I would say you need to reach out to some expert, and if that is academia, or if that to support you, or if it's consultants, that I think it's based on how you normally go about things that are new. Like, how did you go about digital when you started to realize that was important for your company? So I think reaching out to people who know. Work it through with the management team, because this is fundamentally about strategy and strategic direction, and the brand and who you are and what you do. So you need to start from the top, and really educate management team, discuss. You need a strategy. You need to kind of decide what will you prioritize. Once you get a bit further, especially on the climate side, I mean, you need to sign up to science-based targets. You need to set clear, tangible, concrete goals that are measurable, and you cannot set 2050 goals, because I mean, you can have that as a kind of long-term moonshot. This is where we're heading for, but you need to be realistic. I mean, who in senior management today will be around in 2050? So you need to set goals that are within 5 or 10 years. So you as a management team feel like, okay, we are actually pretty responsible and accountable for these goals. And if we don't start now, we will leave something to those coming after us, making it almost impossible for them to act in a good way for society and for planet. So I think get started, get knowledge outside if you don't have it inside, set goals and set a strategy. Those are the kind of starting points. There's a book actually coming very soon where they have written a kind of a how-to guide based on learnings from a lot of companies. So I think there's a lot of literature, and I think once you get into the space, there's so much knowledge out there. So through social media, through LinkedIn, books. So I would say dig into the topic and really learn, and also check out what others are doing in your sector and learn from them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pia. And I think once you find a way, there's no way back, right? When you're topic into this sustainable world of living, I think once you're there, it's very difficult as a consumer or as a brand to go back to where it was. Because when you, as you said, when you dig into the subject, you can clearly understand that you can make an impact, even if a tiny little one, but you can be part, of a better world, not just for today, but the future that lets us, our kids and, the kids of our kids. But it's just how about, it's all about where to start and how to start. And once you're there, learning more about it from, as you said, for people that has the skills about it, or books, or in social media, there is no way back.
And it's so much more fun. I mean, fun really, like if I look at IKEA, sustainability is the top third reason why people choose to work for the brand. So, colleagues, the people you work with is number one, then serving the customer, and then it is sustainability. So, making money, making profit, making a difference, and doing something that's actually good and useful for beyond your own borders, it's just so much more fulfilling. So I think, like you say, once you get into that, you don't want to go back because you're having so much more fun.
Yes, when there is a purpose linked to what we do, it's much more fun. To wake up in the morning makes much more sense, right? When you know that you're working for something that is a great meaning behind and a great purpose, and then actually yourself is making an impact. Pia, thank you so much. What an incredible conversation. I'm pretty sure our audience today got to know more about you, about your experience, but also got a lot of knowledge. And I really hope our audience will feel inspired to start making an impact, even if it's a small one. So thank you so much for your time and for being here with us at our podcast. So such a pleasure to meet with you and talk to you today.
Thanks. It was really lovely talking to you too as well.
Thank you so much, Ed, for being my co-host today. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode. So I hope you have enjoyed your first one.
I've really enjoyed it, actually. Looking forward to the next one, Maira.
Amazing. Very good. So thank you everyone that have listened to us today. So if you're not following us yet, please make sure to follow us on Spotify, on Apple, Amazon, and on YouTube. So very much appreciate your time with us. Hope you have enjoyed this amazing conversation. And then if you have any questions in regards to the subjective or sustainability, or if any questions you wanted to, us to send to Pia, feel free to reach out to us at Imaging Power. And I'm very much looking forward to see you all on our next episode. Thank you again, Pia and Ed, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much, everyone.